We shall go on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Sudarshan, who is going to be detailing on acute anterior uveitis, different case scenarios, and he is a senior consultant uvea in Shankar Nethralaya, Chennai. On to you, Dr. Sudarshan.
Thanks. So I'm to be part of this. A lot of talk of anti-uveitis already discussion, so I'll probably it's easier for me to skip off a few slides. Can you start off?
Sudarshan, you're not very clear.
Could you be a little louder and could you share your screen?
Is it audible better now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you're looking at anterior uveitis, so we can have a variety of presentations. So you can probably have something like this, hypopyon or a granulomatous uveitis or some iris changes here and KPs everywhere. So each of that we start wondering how do you investigate or how do you treat? If you have a hypopyon, sometimes they say you need to use only topicals, it's okay. Sometimes somebody says you need to treat it with systemic therapy. Sometimes you do AC tap, sometimes you operate. So our PGs and fellows might get confused which one, how to use and when, why, and how do we decide what to treat and when. So I'll be trying to show some case scenarios based approach of anterior uveitis and how do we manage.
Can you be louder?
Sorry, just a second.
It's a big process, then leave it.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, if you have findings in the eye which are there are some signs and symptoms suggestive of anterior uveitis, then you start looking at it whether it is anterior uveitis surely. So basically, you will have to rule out whether it is uveitis or not, whether it is a non-uveitic entity which mimics anterior uveitis. Look for the classical signs and symptoms. So whether it's an anterior uveitis only or part of an intermediate or a pan uveitis, whether it's an eye disease alone or whether it's associated with other systemic disease. So any anterior uveitis, make sure it is uveitis. See if it's only anterior or other parts of the eye is involved or other systemic involvement is there. Investigate and manage. And if you are very sure that it is an anterior uveitis, look for activity. Activity is PGs have to know Sun working group classification. If you don't answer Sun working group classification or AC cells and flare in the exam, then probably you don't know anything in uveitis. That's what we'll presume. So look for the severity of uveitis. See if it is a granulomatous or non-granulomatous condition, depending on the KPs, distribution of KPs and the type of KPs, associated intraocular pressure, whether it's raised or not at presentation, and hypopyon, and what type of hypopyon it is. So let's see some classical ones. That's what Avinash is just telling. Depends on what kind of presentation it is. If the classical teaching has been that if it is a first attack, non-granulomatous uveitis, presenting typically in the ALS triangle, a person in the other end of the spectrum of the age group of 40 or 45-year-old male, no other ocular findings, intraocular pressure is normal, no systemic signs or symptoms. Then if you think you can watch him closely, then no need to investigate. So you can probably start off with topical steroids and cycloplegics, but always have a close watch. As Dr. Vishali was telling, nowadays you can't avoid investigating or following up any patient. But there can be some rare lucky persons who may have occasional 1 or 2 attacks and who may not progressively be recurrent. But if you have more classical and indicative presentations like this, fibrin or an organized coagulum or a hypopyon, definitely you need to investigate. So look at this. This is a 32-year-old male presenting with pain, redness, and diminished vision with an fibrin and organized coagulum. So in this patient, this patient had a history of backache. So any patient, a non-granulomatous fibrinous non-granulomatous uveitis in a young patient complaining of backache, the test for HLA-B27. If at all you have to do one test in this, then it is HLA-B27. So as we were just talking or told by Bala, a TB or a sarcoid can present as non-granulomatous, but a HLA-B27 associated uveitis never presents as granulomatous. So this patient was started off on intense topical steroids and cycloplegics, and 1 week post-treatment, this was the response. Once you break up the synechia, you can have this fibrin started retracting and organizing. So fibrinous non-granulomatous uveitis, ask for history of backache or skin lesions, look for evidence of spondylitis or arthritis or any other skin lesions, test for HLA-B27. So HLA-B27 associated uveitis, you need to know that it can be because of retards, ankylosing spondylitis, psoriatic, or inflammatory bowel disease associated. Treat them with topical steroids and cycloplegics. If it is only anterior uveitis and then it's getting okay with topical steroids, then it's fine. But if there is a systemic association and if you have a proven systemic disease, these patients need systemic steroids and immunomodulators as a disease-modifying agent based on the systemic disease. So we were talking about organized fibrin or coagulum, and what happens if there is a hypopyon. This was one patient, 35-year-old with painless hypopyon, had history of aphthous ulcers. He didn't have genital ulcers. We asked for it, and if when you look at the fundus, this was the picture. So if you have a patient with hypopyon, a transient mobile hypopyon, relatively painless or relatively asymptomatic, and if he gives you recurrent aphthous ulcers, then probably you're looking at a fundus picture. You can probably guess the fundus picture of a panuveitis with the vasculitis. FFA might show ferning in these cases. Test for HLA-B51. This can probably be a case of a Behçet's disease. Behçet's disease can present with hypopyon alone initially and progressively become occlusive vasculitic. So these patients have to be treated with immunomodulators primarily. So as they say, phase the index of mind. Presentation of the anterior segment finding can give a clue regarding the posterior segment of the systemic finding. So all hypopyons are not same because this is one 38-year-old male with again another painless hypopyon with diminished vision. So look at the hypopyon. The characteristic of the hypopyon is very important. In Behçet's, it is a transient mobile hypopyon, while in HLA-B27, it's an organized coagulum. While in this, it was a thick hypopyon with a convex upper border. There was some yellow glow of the fundus. Look at the fundus picture, and ultrasound showed organizing exudates and clumps. This patient had a history of UTI with fever. So this was a case of an endophthalmitis. So any hypopyon is not uveitis. If it is hypopyon, think infection first. So a HLA-B27 associated uveitis or Behçet's can present as hypopyon or a coagulum, but always remember that masquerade, it can be malignancy or infection, which can present with hypopyon. Keep in mind. If hypopyon, think infection first, not uveitis. So we saw the classical distribution or an organized coagulum or hypopyon. So what happens if you have mutton fat KPs or broad-based Seneca and iris nodules? So we were talking about Bisaka and Koppes nodules. This was a 40-year-old male with granulomatous uveitis with broad-based Seneca and iris nodules. If something like this comes, then you go through the checklist again, see if it's only an anterior uveitis or a part of an intermediate or pan uveitis. This was a case of active granulomatous mutton fat KPs. DDs, tuberculous or sarcoid, always by priority you can investigate for this, but you can't straight away start investigating based on that alone. Look for posterior segment clues or indicators. Sometimes it may be present, sometimes it may not be present. In this case, it was present, and these were the chorioretinal atrophic patches adjacent to a vessel. So active granulomatous uveitis, a broad-based Seneca with iris nodules or a CRA adjacent to a vessel can be indicative of tuberculosis. And this patient actually had history of primary complex and did not have any symptoms related to the posterior segment, but had multiple recurrences of granulomatous anterior uveitis. And this was treated with anti-tuberculous therapy. So in these situations, you can consider ATT strongly. So we recommend you go through the CON guidelines regarding the tuberculosis treatment. We also have a talk regarding that. You will be explained about that in detail. So similarly, if a young patient comes with a granulomatous uveitis, this is classically described as the angular KPs or a conjunctival nodule. Again, look for posterior segment clues or indicators. This patient had skip lesions in the fundus, which may be indicative of sarcoid. An angiotensin converting enzyme may not be very pathognomonic of sarcoid, but can be an indicator. While MAN2, a negative MAN2 in an immunocompetent patient can be very typical of sarcoid because of cutaneous anergy. So if you have a MAN2 negativity or the granulomatous uveitis with skip vasculitis, probably you are dealing with a case of a sarcoid uveitis, for which you need to treat them with disease-modifying agents like immunomodulators and steroids. So granulomatous uveitis can be TB or sarcoid. This is another patient, a young female, 30-year-old with KPs and Seneca. So we were thinking whether it's a TB or a sarcoid. That's what I was asking one of my fellows. But then always your examination or a diagnosis is not complete without looking at the posterior segment, even if there are significant findings in the anterior segment. This patient had, this was the fundus picture of this patient. So we were wondering, like, looking at the glow. So what actually happened? Go back 2 years back when she came as a 28-year-old with FFA finding like this, which was the starry sky pattern, and progressively started getting recurrences as granulomatous uveitis. So this was in fact a case of a VKH, which initially presented with the posterior uveitic presentation alone, and later on as granulomatous anterior uveitis. So remember that a chronic recurrent phase, or sometimes a convalescent phase of VKH, can present clinically with active anterior uveitis alone. So you
1
should
minute left.
you shouldn't miss out on a VKH, which is presenting initially as a Naradas and which can progressively become a granulomatous anterior uveitis. So a granulomatous anterior uveitis can be associated with the posterior significant findings. Look for these clinical findings, ask for headache or weight loss or appetite loss, and these are the differential diagnosis. So we saw granulomatous uveitis, non-granulomatous. What if you find the scattered KPs with raised IOP? Fuchs is one thing that has to come in mind initially. Typically, iris findings. If you have a scattered KPs with iris findings, you are probably dealing with Fuchs. And if you have raised IOP, the other differential diagnoses are Postner-Schlossman syndrome and viral. The others, to complete the list, you can have patients with postoperative inflammation presenting with anterior uveitis. The drug-induced, you need to remember all the drugs which can cause uveitis, a lens-induced uveitis or a caterpillar hair, among others. So they can have an anterior segment inflammation, but may not be uveitis. Then you're probably dealing with a case of a masquerade or an infection. For instance, this is a 52-year-old male, a chronic post-op uveitic patient, which had recurrences. In a non-known uveitic patient who's beyond that uveigenic age group, if you have a presentation like this, these are intracapsular plaques or deposits, which are usually seen in P. acne. So when you have a finding like this, we did an AC tap and we found that it is a P. acne late end off. So remember that, we also remember that early transient favorable response you can get to steroids in fungus and P. acne, and be aware of it. Again, another extremes of age group, a bilateral hypopyon presenting in a diabetic, always be suspicious. This was a patient of a CML presenting as a bilateral hypopyon. So when in atypical presentations, when your diagnosis is not sure, when it is unresponsive to adequate anti-inflammatory therapy, when you suspect masquerade, do intraocular specimen evaluation. So to conclude, in any anterior uveitis, confirm the site, stage, severity, and systemic association. Look for those classical signs, whether it's an organized hypopyon, organized fibrin or a coagulum, hypopyon, or a granulomatous uveitis. Rule out masquerade. Always do intraocular specimen evaluation when in doubt. Accordingly, do the relevant investigation, not a whole package, and manage it appropriately. If you're wondering what else is happening new in anterior uveitis, there has been a flare meter to detect the flare and to quantify it, mainly for research purposes now. A confocal microscopy, we have one of the speakers who's done extensive work, Dr. Padma Malini, on this. Iontophoretic method of dexamethasone supply to anterior uveitis. There have also been studies on HLA-B27 peptide derivatives as treatment options being considered. So any anterior uveitis, treat with topicals. If it is not responding, systemic, and depending on the systemic association, immunosuppressives. HLA-B27 and JA-associated uveitis are systemic associated anterior uveitis in which you need to consider immunosuppressive early. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sudarshan. That was a great talk and well delivered in 10 minutes. So I have one basic question before I'll ask Srinivas to take on. So if it is a routine case of non-granulomatous uveitis, would HLA-B27 be routinely done in these patients? And if it is a recurrent chronic case, what would be your routinely done investigations? Dr. Sudarshan?
For me, okay. Yeah, if it's a recurrent or a granulomatous uveitis, then we probably deal with we do investigation for TB or sarcoid routinely. If it's a non-granulomatous in a young adult fitting into the HLA-B27 profile, then we do HLA-B27 testing. Otherwise, no.
Chitra, I would like to make a comment.
Yes, Dr. Aishali.
It's always a pleasure. I always enjoy listening to Sudarshan. Two things which I want to clarify. One is
Stop sharing your screen, Sudarshan.
One is the definition of granulomatous. Most of the time, people feel that if you see the nodules or you see mutton fat KPs, that is called granulomatous, which is not the case. Any formed KP, if you see on the endothelium, that becomes granulomatous, and non-granulomatous is only the endothelial dusting. And the Fuchs comes in between, which is now recategorized as microgranulomatous. The understanding of this is very important because the viral and all, they are granulomatous. They are not non-granulomatous. and they should be considered in the differential diagnosis. Secondly, Sudarshan beautifully showed hypopyon being infected. I think one very important clue is look at the glow. If you are seeing yellow glow, howsoever severe the uveitis might be, it does not produce yellow glow. The moment you start seeing yellow glow, it is a very important indicator that what you are dealing with is endogenous endophthalmitis and not a severe form of uveitis. That's all.
Would you take the next questions?
Yes, Sudarshan sir, it's always a pleasure. As Vishali madam said, I've seen multiple talks, and it's always, the slide never feel like stopping to listen to your talk. Sir, one basic questions which most of the postgraduates would like to know. It's a very simple and basic questions, but many have it in their clinical approach. In cases of acute anterior uveitis, when they present for the first time in the clinics, many of them want to know which are the cases that definitely we need to investigate, and which are the cases which we usually stop and don't be that aggressive at the first step, and then go in. If there is a recurrence of the disease, then we go in for the gene expert and all those things. Which are the basic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 testings which every postgraduate should know when a patient presents with acute anterior uveitis?
I think we just had a point that, like Dr. Vishali was just telling, that the old teaching always says that if it's a first attack and a non-granulomatous one, then we don't need to investigate. But that is a classical teaching which no longer holds good that well nowadays, because very rarely we find something that is not recurrent. For me, if at all, if it is a typical endothelial dusting, if the way it has been explained, if it's not these medium sized or large KPs, then it's if I make a diagnosis of a non-granulomatous, if I do one test, then it's probably HLA-B27, depending on the young adult and otherwise. If it's a second or third test, then probably I'll do a chest X-ray or MAN2 and a ACE. If it's more granulomatous, then if I'm leaning more towards TB or sarcoid, then I'll probably aggressively lean towards testing more for TB and sarcoid, like a HRCT or a quantiferon.
And what about the Kaplan regimen, sir?
That's probably, like, if at all we find an intermediate uveitic, I think Kalpana will be talking about it. So we follow the modified Kaplan's approach nowadays. So maybe in the intermediate uveitis, like, she'll be explaining about it.
Thank you, sir. Wonderful.
Can I make one comment?
Yes.
Please.
Yes.
I just wanted to make one of the disease which you should not miss. There's an acute retinal necrosis which can present with the anterior uveitis component. And you should look at the fundus at the earliest opportunity, all anterior uveitis cases, so that there's a peripheral retinal necrosis not missed, which is a vision-threatening disease, real emergency in uveitis. A toxo can be sitting behind and a granulomatous anterior uveitis. So this is important that indirect ophthalmoscopy, and be an expert in indirect ophthalmoscopy, even if you are a uveitis specialist. It's not the anterior only.
So now,
Yes.
like, it's more about this
Yes,
Fuchs
Dr.
like
Vishwas.
uveitis than Fuchs and like all this.
Yes. Yes, Dr. Vishwas, that was a very relevant input. So